Hey guys, and welcome to the India Gill podcast. Now, by now, you guys know that this is a space for real conversations about growth, about healing, and just the courage it takes to live an authentic life. So, really authentically, from a space of having beaten myself up because I should know better, today I want to talk about something that I know that far too many of us are familiar with at the moment, but actually we don't name it, including yours sincerely here, until it's too late. And that is the subject of today's podcast, burnout. Ha. So, but it's not going to be just burnout from a productivity lens. I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to look at it through the eyes of me as a psychotherapist, me as a spiritual seeking individual, and most of all, a woman who's been there. So last year, I ended up in hospital. I collapsed. I couldn't walk, talk, drink, eat, get out of bed. Ended up in hospital for a week in the acute assessment unit. My autoimmune system was compromised, burnt out, and got ocular shingles, which wasn't great, which literally impacted me for the best part of a year because I was on eye drops for that. Could have lost the sight in that eye potentially. And wow, how did we get there? You know, so I got there because, like most of us, we don't recognize that we're burning out because burnout is not loud, right? It's not always loud. It doesn't always announce itself with panic attacks or dramatic breakdowns. Sometimes, like with me, it arrives quietly over time through chronic fatigue, through sometimes those tears that don't make sense, through snapping at people that we love or feeling really numb, even in what moments of joy. So yeah, last year when I landed in hospital, from the outside I looked fine, high functioning, productive, holding it all together. But the truth, I was actually feeling, and it was more about the feeling. I was feeling really disconnected from myself. I was busier than ever, work wise. Um, Everything on the surface looked really good, but I was so deeply disconnected from myself. I had been ignoring those subtle and then not so subtle signs that my body had been whispering to me for far too long. So, from a psychotherapeutic perspective, burnout isn't just about doing too much, right? It can often be about being too little, or too little rest, or too little self-compassion, or too little room to simply be without needing to perform, prove. I wonder if any of this is already resonating with you. And then let's go to a point of, well, I'll use my example. So I had been on I'm always studying. If you know me, you know I'm always studying. I have been for the last decade, um, because that's just what I love to do. So I was on a particular course at the time, and there was going to be an online session, and I literally could not get out of bed. So I emailed my tutor to say, hey, you okay for me to join from bed with my video on because I'm really exhausted? And she was like, yeah, that's fine. So we had a WhatsApp group going, and I put it on there that this was what I was going to do. And one of my colleagues reached out to me, and she said, India, why do you not seem to be able to give yourself permission just not to show up? And that just sat with me. And then she went on to say, and this is where fellow therapists are amazing. She said, you don't seem to be able to give yourself permission. So I'm going to give you permission not to show up today. Just switch off your camera, don't show up. And that's exactly what I did. I just emailed and said, hey, you know what? I'm not up to it. And guess what? Nothing happened. It was okay. And I spent the entire morning, up until, noon in bed. My body was in a trauma response, in a freeze. I could not move. I just lay there. And it's really telling to me that I couldn't notice this in myself, because that was one of the first signs, and I'd actually noticed it in a client of mine when she said, "Oh, my attendance at school is low." It was a sixth form at the time, and I just can't come into school. And I said, "Oh, what do you mean you just can't come into school? What's going on?" "Oh, I just lay in bed." And I said, "Okay, so like, what do you do when you're just laying in bed? Are you scrolling on your phone? What are you doing? Talk me through it." And she said, "Nothing." She said, "I do nothing. I'm incapable of doing anything. I'm just frozen." And as she started to tell me of what she was experiencing, I came to the realization that this was a trauma response. She was in freeze. Her body couldn't move, and she did have a lot of trauma. But when it was me, when I was burnt out, dealing with everyone else's traumas, etc., as you do when you're a therapist, I obviously take that on myself on a cellular level, as well as on a cognitive, somatic. And my body was telling me to stop, slow down. So I did. I slowed down for that morning. And then that was it. In the afternoon, I was off again and back on the hamster wheel. And then it happened again, and literally could not get out of bed. And again, I took the day out and then got back on. But I didn't put any protocols in place, any self care, any winding back. I kept thinking, yeah, I'm going to wind back in the summer. I'm going to cut back my work life. But I didn't do it. And but for the grace of God, it was very lucky that I had a very radical, rude awakening when I collapsed and landed in hospital, and I had to be fed through a drip. I had to be I couldn't drink. So all of that was through a drip. I was on morphine. I was a wreck, could not walk. And it's a very easy thing to say, but listen to that. I couldn't walk. I was that exhausted. I couldn't eat. My appetite was gone. I couldn't talk. I had no energy. So that third wake up call, I remember saying to my daughter-in-law, "Oh, you know what? I'm so glad." Much afterwards, a few months afterwards, I'm so glad that happened. And she said, "Oh, even you can't see a silver lining in this." And I said, "Yeah, I can, because if this hadn't happened, even though I kept saying I'm going to wind down by the summer, now this happened in July, um, and carried on through August and September. And I said, if this hadn't happened, I probably would have carried on at the pace that I was, not saying no to clients, taking on my friends calling me for stuff, their issues with their partners, with their children, so I was taking it all on, and I had absolutely no boundaries in place. Rude wake up call. And that the silver lining in that was that I woke up, and I couldn't work for 2 months. But for an entire month after coming out of hospital, I literally lay on the sofa. A friend of mine used to come over and help me to walk up the street because I literally had no energy. And it was just scary. So I handed in my notice at the place that I was contracting to a couple of days a week. And I thought, right, no, I'm going to just work a few days a week, and compromise on other stuff. But my health has got to come first. And we all say, and we've all heard it, health is wealth. And I'm sure most of us have said that to someone at some point, and we're aware of it. But actually, it really, really is. Because if you don't have your health, you literally have nothing. Nothing. And I remember worrying about my clients because I was thinking, and they were amazing, in supporting me and being understanding. And I was thinking, oh gosh, my clients, like some of them are really struggling and I need to get back. And as I sat with that, I thought, no, without you, India, and not in an egotistical way, but in a real self care, humbling way, without you, unless you're firing on all cylinders, nothing happens. You're no good to anyone. So yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup, okay? Which is what I think I was trying to do. I was trying to fill everyone else's cups at the expense of my own. So what does actually self-care look like? I think we often confuse self-care with spa days, scented candles, getting your nails done, all that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that. Because whilst those can be lovely, though, true self care is a little bit less glamorous, right? It's having boundaries, it's saying no to people when people expect a yes, right? It's logging off, even sometimes when the work isn't done. It's investing in therapy. I worked with my therapist a lot through a couple of episodes, um, in my life where, yeah, that I've been struggling in that way. It's investing in stillness, in solitude. It's choosing presence, not always easy, over performance. And I remember when I was taking stock, and I thought, my God, you know what? My yoga practice really fills me up. And I used to be so regular at it for years. And then when my private practice took off and I was getting contracts left, right, and center, thanks to the grace of God, literally my self care, my yoga practice, my meditation practice all fell by the wayside. Um, and I was just running until I was running on empty. And this to me is really deeply spiritual. Okay. Because every time that we choose ourselves, we're not being selfish. That word selfish has been given a really bad rap. We're not being selfish, but we're returning home to the self that life keeps pulling us away from, right? That still self. I think you may know that many spiritual traditions talk about the soul as something that needs tending to. I've definitely grown up with that, with my mum saying, you take nothing with you in this life. So if you can nurture one thing, invest in one thing, it's your atma, it's your soul. Invest in that, nurture that. Um, so yeah, if the soul is something that needs tending, then burnout in that sense is not just physical exhaustion. It's not meant just mental exhaustion, as it was in my case. It's spiritual depletion. And that's actually how I felt. It's a forgetting of our rhythm. It's a forgetting of our essence, of our boundaries. Do you know what comes to mind is Rumi? The poet Rumi said, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. How can we live life through us? Let life live through us. Does that make sense? Yes. But how can we actually let life live through us when we're constantly overriding our needs to meet expectations? So many of us are doing this. And often when I experience these things myself, I'm deeply grateful because it really informs me not only in my practice, but in my self-awareness, in my delving deeper. And let's bring a little philosophy into this. So in a world that glorifies more productivity, more goals, more impact, more material stuff, we literally forget the sacredness of enough, right? Um, and I often ask people that question, what is your enough? And I had to take stock of that after my burnout, after the burnout, let me not own it. So burnout is often a symptom of chasing a moving target of worth, you know, or of happiness. I'll be happy when. But when we stop to ask ourselves that what if your value doesn't lie in your output, but in your just being, especially in my line of work, who I am when I show up in my practice lends a huge part to my practice, to the work that gets done. So when we stop ourselves to ask, what am I running from? Or who am I trying to be for others? We often find that the antidote to burnout isn't just rest. And I love this insight that came to me. The antidote to burnout isn't just rest, it's reclamation of our time, right? Like in my case, I cut back my practice to just a few days. It's reclamation of our energy, as in learning to say no. It's reclamation of our voice and essentially our truth. So, what can we do? If you're already burnt out, what can we do? Or if you're not burnt out, but you're kind of like dancing on the edge of it. So let me offer a few things that have helped me and my clients. And I'll list them. So if you want to grab a pen and paper, I will list them off. I'll give you five things that you can do that, yeah, will really help you. Number one, listen to your body. It speaks in fatigue. It speaks to you through illness, intention. So please, please, please don't do what I did, as in not listening to it when it whispers. Please listen before it has to scream. My body had to scream at me, right? Had to virtually shut down and say, hey, girl, yeah, you're just not listening and I've had enough of you. So I'm going to do it for you. Number two, this is the real reclamation for me. Rebuild a relationship with rest, not as a reward. You don't have to earn rest, but as a right. Okay, spend that time. Like, I remember a friend of mine sent me a book that they wanted us to read together, and I loved it. It wasn't my kind of book, I thought. And then when I got into it, oh my God, I loved it. And I spent the entire weekend just in my beanbag reading that book cover to cover, doing nothing, right? So, yeah, rest is a right. It's your right. It's not to be earned. It's not a reward. Number three, invest in spaces and people where you can just be real, right? Authentically you, whether that's in therapy, whether that's a circle of trusted friends, or just, going on a walk on your own with your thoughts. For me, it's all of those things. Um, I often say that my therapist knows me like no one else knows me, because there are parts of me that my family don't know. There are other parts of me that my children won't know. There are parts of me that my friends won't know. So everybody knows these different parts and versions of me. But actually, it's very, very rare for someone to know all of you. And I'm very lucky at this age that a lot of people do know a lot of me. I think one of the people who really knows all of me is my therapist, because we have these regular deep dives into what's going on, or where does that come from, and delving into the past. And so please, 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 whether it's with a therapist or friends, really invest in people and places where you can be authentic, where you can be yourself, where you can just be your good, bad, and ugly without judgment, in a safe space. Number four, and this, I swear by this, I teach this, I practice this. Come back to rituals, come back to your routines. If you don't have that, create them. I do a whole workshop on this. Um, Creating your routines, your hour of power in the morning, how that will really serve you. Okay. And it can be morning silence. I have a morning breathwork practice, a morning gratitude practice. It can be prayer. It can be journaling, writing. These aren't luxuries, they're anchors. They will anchor you, ground you. And number five, and this is something that we can look at over and over again. Redefine success. What does success look like for you? We look at success mostly in terms of achievements and material wealth, but actually let it include peace, not just productivity. It's a phrase which I've been really using to myself lately, is when somebody is disturbing my peace or potentially going to disturb my peace. And I'm like, no, I've worked too hard to get to this space. And I will really protect my peace fiercely, like a little warrior. I hope that's been helpful. And I really want to remind you, burnout is not weakness, it's a message. Okay. It's your body and soul calling you back to yourself. So if you're listening today and something in you feels tired, not just physically, but existentially, I want you to know that you are so not alone. Okay. And more importantly, you get to choose differently. You get to choose softness. You get to choose stillness and self-investment. Please do it before things fall apart, right? I was literally on the brink of something which could have been disastrous and a huge lesson. And if things have already fallen apart, don't worry. That's okay too. I got you. Because sometimes a breakdown is the breakthrough. Sometimes the breakdown is the beginning. I hope that's resonated with you. If it's landed with you, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for being here today with me. If this episode resonated, please share it with someone who might need it. And if you've been through burnout yourself, let me know what helped you to come back to yourself. Okay, till we meet again next month, lead with love and approach everyone and everything with curiosity, with a view to understand. Now, you can find me on Instagram at India Core Gill and on Facebook, on LinkedIn. My website is indiagill.com. And if you want to share your reflections, please do so. And until the next time, please take care of your inner world. It's the only one you truly have to live in. Okay, lead with love.